One of the best things that you can give Dad for Father's Day is a really nice steak. None are as impressive as the tomahawk. But here's the question. Do you have the guts to grill a $200 steak? I'm going to show you how. The steak tastes awesome all by itself. It needs really nothing, but some minor seasoning. Here's what I recommend that you do with these steaks. I recommend you smoke them first, but if you smoke them, what's going to wind up happening is you're going to actually start the cooking process. So you need to do what's called a cold smoke. I picked this little tinder box up from Amazon. It's called the Cave Tools. I'll put a link to it down below. And this is really simple. You can just put some chips in there, and I just start them with a blowtorch. Put them in the barbecue, let that steak get a little bit of smoky flavor to it. Or if you have a smoker, obviously that's the way to go. But if you don't, you can use one of these little, it's another form of the box, but it's an octagon shape. You put your pellets in there, same principle. You get them hot, let them catch on fire, and then you turn the flames off and just keep the steaks in a barbecue that has no heat in it. But I own a restaurant and I have a professional cold smoker that I use in my ovens. I'm gonna put that in my barbecue with the tomahawks for 1 hour. I have a mix of pellets in here that I really like. I use cherry, hickory, and mesquite pellets, and I'll put the blend on the recipe on the website. We're gonna put that on the barbecue for 1 hour and just let the tomahawks smoke there for a little while, and that'll also bring them to a warmer temperature, which is where I like them to be when I start to grill them. To start off, we want to season these tomahawk steaks with nothing more simpler than salt and pepper. That's it. But you don't want to use a coarse salt on this, and you also want to make sure that the salt that you use coats everything evenly. Now, I love Celtic sea salt, but I don't have any fine ground Celtic sea salt. So I'm just going to use this Himalayan pink sea salt, which I feel has a little bit more bite to it, and this steak needs that. It needs a little bit more of a salty flavor. What you want to do is just season it so that the steak is coated, and you want to have a liberal amount of salt on this, all right? You don't want to go light on the salt. You just want to make sure that it's everywhere. And you want to make sure, of course, that you do both sides. Followed by a generous coating of coarse pepper. Go for organic. Organic pepper has amazing flavors. I'll put a link down below to the pepper I use. It's by Star West Botanicals. Make sure again that you put pepper on both sides. So these tomahawks in here, they've been smoking for an hour. Oh, look at them, perfect. They're probably at around 50 degrees internal temperature, which is exactly where I want to start the preparation. You have to have 2 thermometers when you're cooking the steak. There's no way around it. The first thermometer here is an infrared thermometer. When the surface of the grill reaches 500 degrees, we are going to turn that side off. And we're going to turn the other side, which is on high, to low. What'll happen is the steak will sear and there won't be any flame below it. Now you don't want to go too much higher than 5 degrees, because if you do, the drippings from the steak, whoa, the bee agrees. You don't want to go higher than 500 degrees, because if you do, the temperature of the steak, the drippings from the fat drippings from the steak are going to create a flare up, even if there's no flare underneath it. So 500 degrees max. My thermometer has a dial on it and it tells me what the grill temperature is, but it usually is off, so you still need to rely on one of these. Right now that's reached 700 degrees, it's too hot. I'm gonna let it cool off a little bit. My steaks are searing on the right side of the barbecue. And on the left side of the barbecue, the temperature is on low. The right side of the barbecue is off. The grates have reached 500 degrees, 550 degrees, a little over, but they'll still be fine. You can go a little higher than 500 and be safe, but when you start getting into the 600-degree range, it's just too hot, and the fat, when it drips off of the steak, will ignite automatically. So I leave it around 500, 550 degrees. I keep the left side on because I want that to still keep the steaks warm, because I'm gonna close the lid on the steaks and let them cook a little bit, just for 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna switch the direction so that it has a nice X mark on it. We're gonna leave the steaks on the right side, on off, for another 2 or 3 minutes, just so they can get that nice checkered pattern on there, the X marks. A lot of guys on YouTube, what they'll do is they'll take the drippings from the steak, they'll collect it while the steak is cooking, and they'll season it, and and as it's cooking on the barbecue, the drippings will continue to cook. And I'm not a big fan of that. There's a specific temperature that I like the au jus to be of the steak when I'm basting the steak. And I can't do that with a barbecue, because the drippings, no matter what you do with them, they're gonna overheat and they're gonna get too hot, and basically you're gonna be putting oil on the meat when you're basting it. So what I like to do is I like to take very finely minced horseradish. I puree it as much as I can in the blender, and then I mix it with butter. The butter has to be at room temperature. And as the steak starts to cook, the butter will melt onto it. If you take butter and you heat it excessively and you taste it, it loses its flavor. But if you take butter and you melt it and it's not quite an oil, the flavor is significantly different. And that's what I want to impart onto the steak. We put our probe in the steaks and we set it to 125 degrees. That's gonna give you a medium rare, more towards a rare steak. What you wanna do with this butter and this horseradish is you wanna coat the entire thing. Make sure that everything is covered on there. Don't leave one tiny speck of area on that steak uncovered. If you want a steak to be medium rare, you put the probe in the center of the thinnest piece first. Once that goes to 125, you take the steak off, put it in a sealed container or cover a container with plastic wrap, and then take the probe and stick it into the thicker piece of steak until that gets to 125. Usually when you buy tomahawks and they're cut, the steaks are cut pretty much the same size, so there isn't that much differential. But if you get one day you want to cook a bunch of steaks and some of them are thick, some of them are thin, always start with the thinner steak, stick it into the center of the thinner one. When it hits the temperature, take it off and move up progressively to the thicker and thicker steaks, so that's why they'll all be cooked medium rare. So hopefully you're not afraid anymore to cook an expensive steak on the barbecue. As long as there's no flame underneath it, you don't have to worry about it being any flare up. Use your infrared thermometer. Make sure that the grates don't go above 550 degrees. When you put your steaks on the hot side, turn that flame off. Then move the steaks over, flip them onto the other side, keep the flame off, and just let the internal temperature tell you when your steak is done. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great Father's Day. Surprise Dad with an awesome steak that'll be perfectly cooked like you got it in a steakhouse. And continue to watch my videos. Please subscribe and ring that bell so you'll get notifications when my videos are released every week. Thank you so much.